Hey friends, tonight we're going to explore the vibrant life of a woman who is part artist, part fierce warrior, and has been completely misunderstood by much of the Western world, the geisha. Before you dive into this story, hit the like button on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying these historical journeys. Don't forget to leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. It's amazing to see people from all around the world tuning in for tonight's storytelling. Now, dim the lights, pull the covers up, and let the gentle hum of the fan set the mood. Let's begin tonight's magical journey. You are a 6-year-old girl. You don't have a cutesy name like Sakura or Yumi. No, you are called Otsuru, which means little crane. Very elegant, if you ignore the fact that you frequently slip into the mud while running and playing in the early summer rain. You live in the heart of Edo, Japan's old capital, where everything feels a bit too orderly. The adults bow so many times that you wonder if they all suffer from aching backs, and the children are taught to sit perfectly still like statues whenever guests arrive, even though all they really want is to dash off and throw stones into the pond. Edo is a strange city. It's like an ink painting come to life, yet also like a market that never rests. Steaming tea houses fill the air with sweet aromas. Rice merchants in curved straw hats hurry about as if chased by an invisible pursuer. And the samurai are so stern that you swear if they ever smiled, the cherry blossoms would all fall in shock. But to you, Edo is simply the place to chase butterflies. Your favorite are those rare pale purple butterflies, so uncommon that whenever you spot one, you're certain you've received a gift from the luck goddess herself. Each morning, after a bowl of thin rice porridge and some pickled radish, you skip out into the backyard, where the scent of grass and earth mingles like a morning melody. Sometimes you pause to count the cicadas singing, their chorus sounding like war drums. But it's the war of summer. Then one day, your mother calls you inside, her voice gentle but with an edge of seriousness you've never heard before. You sense that something is different. She kneels beside you, lifts your chin, and says, "My daughter, from today onward, you will be trained to become a geisha." You don't understand what a geisha is. A kind of dish? A rice merchant? Or perhaps a rare butterfly? But your mother doesn't laugh or explain, simply pulls out the most beautiful kimono from the wardrobe. It's a deep, plum-red kimono, embroidered with crayons. Adults do love their metaphors. You put it on and find it too long, too tight, and scratchy. Before you can protest, your mother thrusts a paper fan into your hand. "A woman must be graceful," she says. Then the two of you step out into the street. You hold your mother's hand as you walk. Today, the paving stones feel colder than ever, or maybe it's because you're no longer allowed to go barefoot. Passersby pause and bow. A few elderly ladies exclaim, "What a charming little girl." But all you want is to strip off this kimono and go back to chasing butterflies. Unfortunately, that's not an option today. You arrive at a large house called an okiya, where geisha are trained. The scent of incense drifts through the air. Flutes play softly, and an elderly woman greets you with a stern gaze. They call her Oka-san, the mother of all geisha. But her eyes seem to be calculating how many lessons you'll need to learn how to pour tea without spilling a drop. You are led into a small room where other little girls in kimonos sit in a row like wooden dolls. A girl next to you whispers, "I'm Tame. I've been here since I was 4. You stiffen? 4? Does anyone audition before they've even mastered the alphabet?" From that moment, your life changes. In the morning, you learn dance. At noon, the shamisen. In the afternoon, 8 different ways to bow. You no longer chase butterflies. Instead, you chase the rhythm of small drums. You no longer count cicadas. You count how many times the paper fan is snatched away by the wind. And if you drop a bowl of tea, oh, my one look from Oka-san would silence every cicada in the garden with fear. You miss home. You miss the thin rice porridge. You miss your mother's laughter when you play games with the cat. Yet you also begin learning new things. how to step as softly as a passing breeze, how to smile quietly yet still move people's hearts. And above all, you learn to listen. A geisha is not just a performer, but someone who knows how to listen, a rare skill in a world where adults always speak and children must keep silent. Then one day, as you turn in the dance you just learned, Oka-san nods for the first time. No words, no smile, just a nod. You don't know why, but in that moment you feel as if you've just captured the rarest pale purple butterfly without even chasing it. And so, from a butterfly-chasing girl, you begin your journey toward becoming a living icon, quiet, refined, and always remembering to bow your head at a perfect 45-degree angle. Ito still glitters all around, but now you've stepped onto a different path where beauty is forged by sweat, where silence is an art form, and where a 6-year-old girl learns to still the entire world with just a sideways glance. You stand before the polished wooden sliding door, intricately carved with wave patterns. The scent of aged wood mingles with a faint whiff of incense drifting from beyond. Perhaps you expect to step into a giant dollhouse where everyone speaks in hushed tones and pours tea with gentle smiles. But the reality is not so. The woman who opens the door for you is a middle-aged lady with her hair piled so high you imagine it could catch radio signals. She is Oka, Santa, mother, of the Okia, but her eyes are nothing like a mother's. They're more like those of a figure skating judge marking your fall with embarrassingly low scores. You bow your head and force a shy smile, your hand trembling slightly in the stiff kimono. Your mother bows deeply, as if she's committed treason against the shogun. Your father murmurs a few brief words, probably something about honor. Your future and green teethen both retreat as swiftly as if they'd just forgotten their child at a job interview. And that's how you officially become a shikome. The name sounds like a traditional dish, but in truth it refers to the little girls who run errands in the okia, the very first step on a journey nobody asked if you wanted to take. Inside, the house feels like an ancient temple fused with a national library. It's so silent you can hear the wind brushing across the paper doors, a cat's paws on the wooden floor, and even the invisible sighs of all the young apprentices who once tried and failed to master the fan dance. Oka-san leads you down a long wooden corridor where paper lanterns hang, casting a dim, otherworldly glow, as if you're about to be summoned into some obscure ritual. Every step you take produces a soft creak, quite endearing, if you don't realize that everyone else glides by in complete silence. Not a single sound. They move like ghosts with glossy hair and perfectly unwrinkled kimonos. You're shown your sleeping quarters, not exactly a room, but a tatami mat tucked behind a folding screen. No plush toys, no cat-shaped nightlight, just a neatly folded futon that looks as if it's never been slept on. Your first day begins with a broom. You're handed a broom so long you suspect it once served as a ninja's weapon. Your task: sweep every inch of the floor. From the crack of dawn until the moon rides high, you scrub the wood as if searching for treasure in every grain. No praise, no words of encouragement. If you make a mistake, Oka-san doesn't need to speak. On glance from her is enough to wilt the flowers in the vase from shame. After sweeping comes fetching water. The bucket is larger than your head, and the corridor stretches on like a monk's path to enlightenment. Every time you wobble and spill a drop, you wonder if someone is secretly filming you for some merciless challenge show. But that's not the hardest part. The hardest part is learning to become invisible. In the okia, shikome are forbidden to draw attention. You mustn't breathe heavily, yawn, or be present in the literal sense. The geisha pass by you as if you're part of the furniture. They move in silence, with such grace and perfection that you begin to suspect they aren't human. Perhaps they're fairies, or kabuki actors wearing impossibly convincing makeup. You are a 6-year-old girl. You don't have a cutesy name like Sakura or Yumi. No, you are called Otsuru, which means little crane. Very elegant, if you ignore the fact that you frequently slip into the mud while running and playing in the early summer rain. You live in the heart of Edo, Japan's old capital, where everything feels a bit too orderly. The adults bow so many times that you wonder if they all suffer from aching backs, and the children are taught to sit perfectly still like statues whenever guests arrive, even though all they really want is to dash off and throw stones into the pond. Edo is a strange city. It's like an ink painting come to life, yet also like a market that never rests. Steaming tea houses fill the air with sweet aromas. Rice merchants in curved straw hats hurry about as if chased by an invisible pursuer. And the samurai are so stern that you swear if they ever smiled, the cherry blossoms would all fall in shock. But to you, Edo is simply the place to chase butterflies. Your favorite are those rare pale purple butterflies so uncommon that whenever you spot one, you're certain you've received a gift from the luck goddess herself. Each morning, after a bowl of thin rice porridge and some pickled radish, you skip out into the backyard, where the scent of grass and earth mingles like a morning melody. Sometimes you pause to count the cicadas singing, their chorus sounding like war drums. But it's the war of summer. Then one day, your mother calls you inside, her voice gentle but with an edge of seriousness you've never heard before. You sense that something is different. She kneels beside you, lifts your chin, and says, "My daughter, from today onward, you will be trained to become a geisha." You don't understand what a geisha is. A kind of dish? A rice merchant? Or perhaps a rare butterfly? But your mother doesn't laugh or explain, simply pulls out the most beautiful kimono from the wardrobe. It's a deep, plum-red kimono, embroidered with crayon. As adults do love their metaphors. You put it on and find it too long, too tight, and scratchy. Before you can protest, your mother thrusts a paper fan into your hand. "A woman must be graceful," she says. Then the two of you step out into the street. You hold your mother's hand as you walk. Today, the paving stones feel colder than ever, or maybe it's because you're no longer allowed to go barefoot. Passersby pause and bow. A few elderly ladies exclaim, "What a charming little girl." But all you want is to strip off this kimono and go back to chasing butterflies. Unfortunately, that's not an option today. You arrive at a large house called an okiya, where geisha are trained. The scent of incense drifts through the air, flutes play softly, and an elderly woman greets you with a stern gaze. They call her Oka-san, the mother of all geisha. But her eyes seem to be calculating how many lessons you'll need to learn how to pour tea without spilling a drop. You are led into a small room where other little girls in kimonos sit in a row like wooden dolls. A girl next to you whispers, "I'm Tame. I've been here since I was 4. You stiffen? 4? Does anyone audition before they've even mastered the alphabet?" From that moment, your life changes. In the morning, you learn dance. At noon, the shamisen. In the afternoon, 8 different ways to bow. You no longer chase butterflies. Instead, you chase the rhythm of small drums. You no longer count cicadas. You count how many times the paper fan is snatched away by the wind. And if you drop a bowl of tea, oh, my one look from Oka-san would silence every cicada in the garden with fear. You miss home. You miss the thin rice porridge. You miss your mother's laughter when you play games with the cat. Yet you also begin learning new things. How to step as softly as a passing breeze. How to smile quietly yet still move people's hearts. And above all, you learn to listen. A geisha is not just a performer, but someone who knows how to listen, a rare skill in a world where adults always speak and children must keep silent. Then one day, as you turn in the dance you just learned, Oka-san nods for the first time. No words, no smile, just a nod. You don't know why, but in that moment you feel as if you've just captured the rarest pale purple butterfly without even chasing it. And so, from a butterfly-chasing girl, you begin your journey toward becoming a living icon, quiet, refined, and always remembering to bow your head at a perfect 45-degree angle. Edo still glitters all around, but now you've stepped onto a different path where beauty is forged by sweat, where silence is an art form, and where a 6-year-old girl learns to still the entire world with just a sideways glance. You are a shikomi, a title that sounds like a position in a secret imperial court, but in reality means a lowly helper in a house where no one is allowed to make a sound. In the okia, silence isn't golden, it's mandatory. Spill a single grain of rice? Oka, sun's glare can freeze you like the first snowfall of winter. You may not speak. Not the speak less to seem elegant kind of hush, but the open your mouth and you'll forfeit tonight's dinner kind. Each morning you wake before the rooster even thinks of crowing, not out of love for labor, but because the wind rattling down the unglazed corridor is enough to wake an entire anthill. Your bedding? A thin futon laid beside the sliding door where the cats often pause to groom themselves and look down on you. The day's first task begins with brushing the tatami mats. You've come to know the smell of dried straw better than rice. Your tiny hands become calloused from wiping horizontally, then vertically, then horizontally again, like a logic puzzle for those with samurai-like endurance and knees of steel. You don't learn from books. No one hands you a geisha for dummies. The only way to learn is by watching. You stand silently behind the sliding door, your eyes wide as lanterns, observing the geisha tying their obi, an intricate procedure you're convinced NASA designed to test the human brain. You track each finger's movement, steady, unhurried, flawless. Pouring tea, not a single drop is spilled, even as the kettle tips at an angle, as precise as some arcane math equation. Smiling? They smile in silence, lips closed, cheeks uncreased, the kind of smile that makes you feel important, yet never quite sure you're liked. You try to imitate them. Each time you practice pouring, tea dribbles onto the tray, the table, even your sleeve. And if you err, Oka-san need not utter a word. One slight glance, and you feel as if you've cracked a national treasure. You eat last. After everyone else has finished, you sit before a cold meal. Sometimes there are only a few grains of rice left, but you mustn't complain. Why? Because you are a shikomi. And shikomi don't receive rations, only tests of patience. You learn to cry without making a sound. If you let even a single sob escape, you'll likely be invited to mop the entire corridor with a handkerchief. Your tears soak into your collar, yet you keep your head bowed and continue working. And in those silent tears, you begin to realize you are changing. You start to notice the smallest details. How a geisha bows to a guest, not too quickly, not too deeply, just enough to show respect while keeping her spine straight. How she twirls a paper fan, like a miniature dance, movements as soft as a dragonfly's wings at dusk. You learn to move silently. At first, you step like a chick on ice, but bit by bit, you begin to glide. And one day, you discover you've slipped past Oka-san without her noticing. A grand, silent victory. In the evenings, you tend the charcoal fire. Don't think it's simple. The coals must glow evenly, without smoke or odor, without causing anyone to wince in tears. Once, you stoked too fiercely, and smoke billowed into the main room. Yukiko sneezed, and you were accidentally assigned to clean the restroom for 3 days straight. From then on, you learned to handle the coals like a jazz musician, feeling by instinct, acting with patience. You also learned to arrange the sandals. Yes, merely sandals. But in the okia, they must align perfectly, no crooked angles, and above all, none may go missing. Once you set them the wrong way, and a guest nearly tumbled when stepping out. That day, you learned a precious lesson. Beauty lies in the details, 7, when those details are just an old pair of sandals. And through all these repetitive tasks, sweeping the floors, tending the fire, carrying water, you gradually come to understand something more important than anything else. The silence here is more than a rule. It is a language reserved for those patient enough to hear what is left unspoken. And you, the tiny shikomi girl, begin to listen. Not with your ears, but with your eyes, your hands, your heart. You are learning, not through words, but with every respectful bow, every half-open paper fan, every footstep as light as the morning breeze. Dear audience, please take a moment to relax or have a sip of water, then continue to listen to the rest of this surprising story. Comment 1 if you're enjoying the tale, so we know you're still here. Now you're accustomed to scrubbing tatami floors with your tiny hands and never sitting comfortably on your legs. But today, you're officially entering a new training regimen, something some call an art form, and your knees call betrayal. They call it Seiza, a word as elegant as a spring flower's name, but in reality, it's the polite Japanese way to torture your knees. You're instructed to kneel, fold your legs under you, rest your bottom on your heels, and keep your back so straight you feel as if someone has laid a sword along your spine and declared, "Move," and you lose your head. At first you think, surely just a few minutes, but you're so wrong. Minutes later, your legs go numb literally as if thousands of tiny wooden, heeled ants are parading through your body. You feel a buzzing itch in places you didn't even know had nerves. But the rule is, do not move. A geisha never betrays her feelings. No frowns, no groans, no faces twisted by cramps. Everything must appear graceful. Even when you're about to collapse from lack of circulation, you must smile the kind of smile that says, "I'm fine," even though you're turning to stone inside. Beside you, the seasoned geisha sit motionless, statuesque. They don't breathe heavily or break a sweat. You suspect they were trained in the womb, or perhaps they're living wooden dolls. You try to mimic them, but occasionally, your spine emits a tiny snap, enough for Okasan to cast a quick glance, as if you'd just dropped the moral value of an ancient culture onto the floor. And it's not over yet. Once you've endured the kneeling, it's time for the bows. Bowing, you'd think it's simple. Just tilt your head, right? Wrong. In the Okiya, bowing is a sacred ritual, no less complex than an integral calculus problem. How many degrees do you bend? Where do your hands rest? How long do you hold it? And most importantly, do not tremble. You practice hundreds of times. Bow too quickly? San's soft voice drifts like a breeze. Again. Bow too slowly. Again. Bow correctly, but your gaze is off. Again. Though no one raises their voice, you feel as if every ancestor of the art form is looking down, shaking their heads in disappointment. One day, you bow a bit too forcefully, your forehead nearly hitting the tatami. San approaches. No scolding, no punishment. She simply whispers one sentence, her tone so gentle, it's almost a lullaby. If your bow makes someone fear you'll break your neck, that isn't a bow, it's surrender. You swallow your tears and bow again, more slowly this time, more deliberately, and in that moment, you hear something, nothing at all, a victory. Gradually, you learn to blend into a world of purposeful pain. Seiza is no longer torture but a symbol. You begin to realize in the silence, your body is learning. Learning to sit without betraying weakness. Learning to breathe without mussing your hair. Learning to smile even as your thighs go numb. And strangely, there is a certain beauty in it all. A bow is no longer merely tilting your head. It becomes speech without words. Your way of telling the world, I am here, I am silent, but I know every step I take. And Seiza? It's no longer punishment, it's a canvas. You're a living portraitari, learning to hold yourself perfectly still, even when inside you want to scream. Sometimes, you think of the days when you chased butterflies, of sitting on the front step, legs stretched out, eating plums and scratching your ankles. But then you glance around the geisha seated beside you, as if time itself has paused. Each one a silent symphony. No instruments, no singing, just slow movements, gentle as a breath, yet powerful enough to still the entire room. At night, you tiptoe back to your sleeping spot in the corridor. You lie down, your legs aching, but your mind at peace. It's strange. After a long day spent enduring, bowing, and balancing, you do not feel exhausted. You feel exactly where you belong. You begin to understand. Art isn't always music or color. Sometimes, art is holding one posture for 30 minutes while your legs howl like they want to take you to court. And you, the small girl in a slightly too tight kimono, slowly becoming an artist, not through sound, but through graceful endurance. Congratulations, you've survived the phase of becoming an invisible cleaning machine. After countless days sweeping tatami floors at lightning speed and bowing at exactly the right angle like a trigonometry formula, you've officially been promoted to Maikoa Geisha Apprentice. A title that sounds glamorous, aristocratic, and cherry blossom fragrant, but in reality smells distinctly of hair wax. On your first morning as a Maiko, you're taken to the traditional hairstylist. There, your hair, which used to be hastily tied back with an elastic band as a shikomi, is transformed into a living work of art. Literally. It's slicked with wax and sculpted into an elaborate crest like an ancient watchtower, adorned with combs, artificial flowers, ribbons, and possibly a tiny device to monitor any tremor of your head. Touch it? Dream on. Scratch your scalp? Sorry, you forfeited that privilege yesterday. To keep that hairstyle intact for a week, you must sleep on a takamakura pillow in name only. It's actually a wooden block about the height of your fist, topped with a cushion the size of a cat's paw. Rest your neck on it, and you'll learn the true definition of endurance. Roll to the left, your hair shifts. Turn right, your flower falls. Breathe too hard, your comb clatters to the floor. After a few nights, you start wondering why you ever passed up the chance to sell taiyaki, at least they don't come with built-in architecture. And the clothing? A Maiko's kimono isn't something you slip into in a hurry like a hoodie. It's a ceremonial garment so sumptuous that if you stand still, you might be mistaken for a high-end drapery panel. Layers of thick, lustrous silk, sleeves brushing the floor, and an obia belt as long as a scroll of medieval vellum tied in an intricate knot, as if you're a living offering to the sun goddess. To don this ensemble, you need at least 2 assistants. One holds you upright like a stone statue, while the other circles you, pulling, tying, cinching, and wrapping you as if you were raw sushi. The process takes about an hour or longer if you accidentally exhale against orders. When it's done, you look in the mirror and see a vibrant blossom. Inside, though, you feel like a steamed sweet potato wrapped in 10 layers of cloth, waiting to be served. You walk in tiny, cautious steps as if an alarm bell is attached to your heels. Because the kimono is so long, your gait must be short, measured, and almost immobile. In fact, if there were a contest for who can walk the slowest with the utmost elegance, Maiko would surely claim all 3 top spots. Your daily duties have changed. No more floor scrubbing. Instead, you learn the fan dance, the sleeve dance, the toe point dance. You learn to pluck the shamisen without tangling its strings. You learn to brew tea with the tilt of your wrist, measured in millimeters, as if performing a psychological surgery with boiling water. Smile? Of course you smile, but only a little. No teeth showing, no cheek tremors, no sound. Just a smile subtle enough to make someone wonder, did I say something funny? And then feel more attractive simply because you smiled at them. You learn to sit, stand, and tilt your head. To look at someone without staring directly. You learn to pour tea without creating a ripple. You learn to answer one question in 10 different ways, none of which include the word no. In the world of the Maiko, even refusal must be beautiful. But beauty comes with pressure. In that dazzling kimono, you cannot afford a single misstep. A stray bead of sweat at the wrong moment, one offbeat step and oka. San's gaze will darken the bright tatami room like a storm cloud rolling in. Beneath the layer of white powder, red lips, and gentle eyes, you must remain graceful, confident, yet absolutely devoid of overt suffering. Each evening, you look into the mirror and see another version of yourself. A girl who once counted cicadas and chased butterflies now wears an entire culture stitched meticulously with red thread, silk fabric, and responsibility. Yet despite aching feet, a numbed neck, and tired shoulders, there is one thing you cannot deny. You are living within art. Not the art on stage, but the art of living slowly, precisely, consciously in every gesture. The art of becoming an icon not by speaking loudly, but by knowing when to remain silent. After hundreds of days of sweeping floors, thousands of bows calibrated to the exact degree, and countless nights sleeping on a wooden pillow as if you were taking an applied physics exam with your neck, the day finally arrives. Misadashi, the debut day. The day you're no longer an anonymous Maiko tiptoeing in the shadows, but an official blossom displayed for all to see. That morning, you're awakened earlier than usual, before even the roosters can open their eyes. Oka-san enters with a gaze, slightly less gentle than usual. She says little, simply placing before you a kimono so long you suspect it could serve as curtains in Osaka Castle. This is no ordinary kimono. This is your debut kimono, a garment designed to impress so powerfully, it takes your breath away. The silk is weighty, as if woven from an entire mulberry forest. The sleeves so long that each step must be choreographed, as though you're carrying a wedding gown through a downpour. No worse. Wedding gowns never come with platform clogs nearly as tall as a building. Yes, today you must wear okobatol, thick, weighty wooden clogs that echo clomp, clomp through the neighborhood. Your footsteps are no longer the whispers of legendary geisha. They sound like a careful construction crew at work. Next comes makeup. Your face is coated in a fine white rice powder so perfect you look in the mirror and wonder if you've become porcelain or mochi. Your lips are painted only on the lower half in a vivid red like someone started applying lipstick, got called away, and never returned. Your eyes are outlined in red and black, not to seduce, but to command authority, as if to say, I can serve tea and pass judgment simultaneously. And then, at last, you are led outside. The Kyoto street seems to slow down. Every eye turns toward you not because you're famous, but because you look like a living scroll painting unveiled for the first time. With each step, you must calculate precisely. No slipping toes, no tripping hems, no stepping on your own obi, because no one wants their debut ending in the infirmary after a fashion-induced fall. At your side walks your one-san, your mentor geisha, who will guide you through the tea houses and introduce you to the elite. She moves as if gliding. You move like a child on stilts at a traditional festival. Yet you force a smile, a gentle smile, no teeth showing, no hint of the 3 aching toes hidden beneath your kimono. You pass through narrow cobblestone alleys and weathered wooden gates where aristocrats and seasoned merchants sip tea and decide the fate of their next sushi course. Each time you meet someone new, you bow 30 degrees, hold for 3 seconds, eyes lowered just enough, and if anyone asks, yes, you've practiced this more than your multiplication tables. Inside the tea houses, everyone laughs and chats. And you observe, tilt your head, and display your elegant presence, a polite way of saying, you may not speak much. You smile at precisely the right moments, bow in precisely the right places, and pour tea at precisely the right temperature. The art of just enough to convey refinement, but not enough that anyone recalls what you said. Yet it is within this just enough that you begin to feel different. You are no longer the little girl chasing butterflies in the garden, no longer the shikomi kneeling beside buckets of water. Today, you are an official Maiko, standing at the heart of Kyoto, wrapped in layers of silk woven from centuries of tradition, being seen and remembered. And even though all you've managed to eat today are 3 sips of tea and half a wagashi, the rest smudged on your lipstick, and even though your feet are ready to file a formal complaint with the deities of feng shui for severe mistreatment, you still stand back straight, chin lifted just enough, and think to yourself, I survived. Indeed. In a world where every bow is a test and every step an exam in balance, survival is the first victory, and you, the Maiko child, reborn into Artave, triumphed. Mornings in the Okia don't begin with a rooster's crow, but with the soft swish of a silk brush gliding across your face. Today, like every other day, You a fledgling mycophos, what's deemed the most sacred art form, transforming yourself into a living painting. And you know full well that a single unsteady stroke will send you back to square one, armed only with a damp cloth and an exasperated sigh from Okasan. To outsiders, makeup might mean dusting on powder, applying lipstick, or lining the eyes. But for a Maiko, it's a metamorphic ritual worthy of an immortal elixir in a legend. Each morning, you don't simply make up your face, you build a persona, a symbol, a little legend who can walk, pour tea, and smile with her eyes. It begins with the skin. You sit before a wooden mirror in a small room suffused with rice powder fragrance, the lantern's dim glow still half asleep on your face. You bow your head, inhale, then open the shiro nuri box, the white powder made from rice ground, so finely the soul of each kernel might well resent such refinement. You dip a bamboo brush into water, swirl it in the powder, then lift it to your skin. In even measured circles, you paint your first layer, the white base extending from forehead to chin, easing down your neck. It feels as if you're wrapping yourself in a cold rice, cake smooth, sweet, and utterly suffocating. There's no rushing. One thick patch or a lopsided tone would turn you into a botched porcelain doll. So every brushstroke becomes a prayer for steady hands, a calm heart, and no surprise knocks at the door. Next come the eyebrows. Well, what used to be your eyebrows. Yes, you apply a special foundation to erase your natural brows. Then, wielding a charcoal black pencil as fine as a hair and the patience of a Buddhist monk, you redraw them, not the carefree arches of childhood, but two elegant curves like swallows in spring. They must match. They must be delicate. They must evoke the classic. If one is higher than the other, congratulations, you've just become a politely astonished geisha. And no, that is not the look they encourage. Next comes the lips, where everything becomes meaningfully peculiar. As a newly minted Maiko, you don't apply lipstick over both lips like an adult. Instead, you paint only the center of your lower lip, a small red bow shape, leaving your upper lip stark white. This not only makes you look innocent, but also leaves anyone who sees you wondering, did she simply forget the final step, or is this the trend? You once accidentally overstepped the red outline. The result? You once accidentally overstepped the red outline. The result? You had to start all over, and you learned a lesson. Beauty lies not in perfection, but in controlling imperfection within strict boundaries. After the lips come the eyeliner, task requiring an architect's precision and an archer's nerves of steel. First, you draw a thin red line along the lower lash line, symbolizing youth and vivacity. Then a black line along the upper lash lineate to make your gaze sharp, but to accentuate the look and yet not look effect. You gaze into the mirror. Your face is no longer that of the girl who once sat at the back kitchen arranging chopsticks. It is now the visage of an icon, an image that could traverse history and poetry, causing onlookers to pause their mochi and marvel. Yet that icon must be continually tuned. One bead of sweat, a single frown, or even a sneeze can cause the makeup to crack slightly, and you know that in the okia, a slight crack is an aesthetic scandal of the highest order. So you learn to keep your face motionless like a flower at dawn. No loud laughter, no yawns, no rubbing your eyes. If an itch strikes, you blink slowly. If you're sleepy, you lower your gaze with reverence. You internalize this. A Maiko's beauty isn't for expressing emotion, but for preserving an eternal imagination. Matter how hungry you are, how sore your feet, or how numb your neck. Sometimes, you stare at yourself in the mirror for a long time. Beneath the white powder lie the eyes of the little girl who once counted butterflies in the Edo garden. But today, those eyes know how to keep secrets, how to smile without revealing feeling, how to tell a story with a single glance. Makeup each morning is no longer a chore. It's a ritual, a kind of mirror and rice powder meditation, where you learn not just to be seen, but to become the living embodiment of something greater than yourself, tradition, elegance, and the power of silence. After learning to sit without breathing heavily, smile without showing your teeth, and paint only half your lips, you thought you'd earned the first-class medal for silence. But Noth Okia had one more challenge in store for you, an art both refined and a test for any listener's nerves at the start learning to play the shamisen. At first glance, the shamisen doesn't look too intimidating. It's merely a three-stringed instrument, a wooden body covered in skin, and a long straight neck. But don't let that simple appearance deceive you. The shamisen is not just an instrument, it's an examination of musicality, emotion, and self-control. Because the first time you touch it, the sound it makes is not music, it's the grumpy meow of a cat trapped under a table. You are handed an old shamisen. Old here doesn't mean it's been lovingly passed down through generations of maikoit, means it's been mangled by generations of bad players. You grip the baki, a large, triangular pick as if it were a stiff wooden soup ladle, and begin. The string vibrates. A sound emerges. You pause. Someone in the next room coughs, maybe dust, maybe the instrument. The first week is hell. Each time you practice, the neighbor's cat flees. The birds fall silent, and you suspect Oka-san is considering a sound forbidden zone sign. But you don't give up. For behind every odd note lies an opportunity to understand that no one becomes an artist overnight, especially when that night you sleep little because you must learn to smile at someone whose words you can't yet follow. Then, one afternoon, as the sun gilds the tatami and the scent of lotus tea drifts through the window, you pluck a string and it rings, like a real musical note. No longer a cat's protest, no longer the thud of rice cake on wood, just a full, lingering tone, like the house's gentle sigh. You smile. The shamisen has finally agreed to cooperate. But the shamisen is only half the journey. The other half, perhaps the harder part, is the art of conversation. In the okia, a maiko is judged not only by her fan dance or her spill-free tea pouring, but also by her ability to converse, not by speaking a lot, but by speaking at just the right moment. Not to flaunt knowledge, but to make the other person feel they are the most fascinating soul in the room, even if they've just recounted a 45-minute tale of the harvest, complete with chopstick-illustrated graphs. You are taught to listen, not by nodding wildly because that would ruin your kimono's drape, but by listening with your eyes and a perfectly poised smile. For instance, when a merchant tells you that this year's rice yield has exceeded all expectations, you don't exclaim, "Oh, wonderful," like an ordinary person. You tilt your head a precise 15 degrees, smile just enough, and respond with the classic, "Indeed. It has been a year of abundant blessings for the land." A phrase fitting for both the harvest and someone's new marriage. You learn to guide conversation without controlling it. In other words, you become a subtle leader, not a detective. When a guest recounts childhood memories, you offer a gentle smile. When they begin to complain about taxes, you deftly steer the topic. Do you recall last year's cherry blossoms? That season was truly beautiful. Didn't you visit Gion? And just like that, instead of discussing budget law, the entire room is talking about tea and sweets. You discover that some guests need only a timely nod to feel heard. Others require you to affirm your talent, even if they're lamenting a failed fishing trip. And some, quite a few, need only someone who doesn't contradict them to feel they've found a kindred spirit. Night after night, you pluck your shamisen and listen. On evenings when your playing falters, the guests still smile. For they haven't come to critique technique, they've come to feel seen. And you, draped in a kimono heavy with history, hair arranged like a miniature Templar, the one who makes them feel the world has grown a little gentler. One night, after the guests have departed, you sit alone in the room. Your hand drifts over the shamisen strings, not plucking, merely stroking them. A familiar sensation, like caressing your own story. From the little girl in Edo chasing butterflies to the maiko who balances an entire conversation with a single smile. And you suddenly realize music, dialogue, gesture, they are all ways to keep the room warm. Not with heat, but with presence. At a certain point in your maiko journey, after mastering the shamisen without scaring off the neighbor's cat, and perfecting tea pouring like a silk ninja. You are informed. Today, you will meet someone important. You immediately imagine a prince? Or a Kyoto scholar? No, you're off the mark. It's the Dana patron, a wealthy, powerful man willing to invest a substantial sum in your livelihood, wardrobe, and art. It sounds like a fairy tale, but don't let the term patronage fool you. This is a silk-wrapped relationship, not a romance. A Dana is not a lover. He's the sort who reads financial news in Latin, invests in merchant ships, and wears neutral gray kimono because it conveys quiet power. He doesn't smile often, but when he does, you must return the smile at precisely the right angle and moment as though your smile were embroidered in silver thread. Your first meeting takes place in an elegant tea house. You wear your finest kimono naturally purchased from his account, or that of another Dana. Hair piled high, lower lip painted halfway, eyes delicately outlined. You enter as if a breeze from the Sea of Japan has drifted through the porch, graceful, effortless, and giving no hint that you're worried your obi knot might loosen. The Dana sits like a wooden statue, holding a tea bowl but not drinking. His gaze doesn't rest on you as a person, but as a piece of art that may appreciate over time. You bow and smile, not so briefly as to seem disrespectful, nor so long as to appear overly eager, just the right length, like a single shamisen pluck over a cup of tea. The conversation begins with polite questions. Where do you study? What is your favorite flower? Have you ever performed in Gion? You answer in soft phrases specific enough to show you have character, yet vague enough to keep your thoughts unread. Because you know well, this is not about romance. It's an unwritten contract, a subtle social exchange wrapped in silk, signed with glances and silence. Some Dana are simply lovers of the arts. They're enchanted by your dance, your shamisen playing, and wish to support a Maiko like you to preserve tradition. Meetings with these patrons are as gentle as falling petals. They discuss weather, art, tea ceremony, and you sit like a precious vase, nodding sometimes, occasionally quoting a haiku for delight. But others prefer ownership to patronage. They don't just want to hear you play. They want to know where you go, what you think, what you eat, how you breathe. They imagine themselves at the center of a silk universe, and you as the delicate planet orbiting them. With such Dana, you require additional skills in emotional balance and linguistic fencing. You learn to say no by saying yes, but yes on another occasion. You master topic shifts when he probes your private life. Do you have a family? You reply, yes, my family is music and the kimonos passed down from generation to generation. An answer touching enough, distant enough, and most importantly, saying nothing at all. You become a master of proximity without touch. There are moments when you look at him and smile inwardly, thinking, if emotion were a door, you hold the latch from the inside. You can make him feel like the most important person in the world, yet keep your own heart sealed like a splendid box for which no one holds the key. And the wonderful thing? No one blames you for it, because in the geisha world, discretion is an art. You never lie, yet you never reveal the whole truth. You do not object, yet you do not fully agree. You never step back, but every step forward is a calculated dance. Years from now, when you look back, you will remember your first Dana as a lesson. Not about money, but about boundaries. How a young woman in a kimono can walk amid curious gazes and enticing offers, yet remain as graceful as if walking on clouds. A Dana isn't something you yearn for, but they are part of the game. And you are not merely a player but one who knows the rules, owns the rules, and sometimes lets others think you've won without even playing. If you think the path to becoming a Maiko is all about kimono, white powder, and the perfect smile, then you clearly haven't met the Okobo. That's right, the Okoba, those towering wooden clogs as hefty as a court secret, their clop-clop echoing through Kyoto's narrow streets like a church bell in kabuki. They're not just shoes. Oh no, dear reader, they are a test of patience, balance, and inner fortitude. If your kimono is the shell that carries you into the world of art, then the Okobo are your first exam of your heels. The first time they hand you a pair, you stare at them as though they're museum relics. Nearly calf-high, lacquer glossy, with intricately embroidered cloth strap sands so heavy you wonder, are these for walking or for weightlifting? You slip your feet in. In that instant, you cease to be human. You become a giraffe trying on swan slippers. Every joint protests. Taking a single step feels like drafting a national budget. Standing is hard enough. Stepping requires a miracle. The clop-clop begins immediately. Not a delicate tap, more like an announcement. Attention, unseasoned Maiko approaching. The wood striking Kyoto's cobblestones isn't merely a signal, it's a symphony. It tells the whole neighborhood that art is learning to walk. You're taught that walking in Okubo isn't movement, it's performance. Each step must not only be on beat, but graceful, almost airborne elegant, if your legs weren't simultaneously wrestling the weight of a miniature wooden table on each foot. Every time you manage 3 unsteady free steps, you deserve a standing ovation, or at least a cup of hot tea in the courtyard. Then, of course, it rains. Nothing, absolutely nothing prepares you for the nightmare called Okubo meets water. Slick wood, slippery stones, a trailing kimono hem. And you, in the middle of it all, must keep walking as if you command the weather with your gaze. You learn high-level balance skills stuff circus performers might want to try out in Gion come June. Once, you nearly fell at a tea house gate, your kimono snagged, your clogs skidded on the pavement, and you wobbled like a young bamboo in a storm. But you managed to turn the stumble into a twirl, smiling as though it were choreographed. An elderly lady applauded, calling you delightfully graceful. You smiled in thanks while your knees filed a formal complaint with the guild. Over time, you grow accustomed to them. You no longer walk as if under sentence. You begin to glide, not roller skate glide, but a measured, mindful slide. Clog hits ground clop. Lift clop, slow and sure, never rushed, as if you lead an orchestra whose only instrument is your own footsteps. And the strange thing is, people listen. The sound of the Okubo becomes a signature. When that sound echoes from the end of the street, people look up. Ah, a Maiko is coming. No need to see, no need to ask. The clop-clop echoing through the old quarter is a gentle yet weighty declaration. Art is present, respect it. You begin to understand that those clogs do more than raise your height, they lift you above the ordinary. People no longer see you as just another girl walking in the rain. They see an embodiment of Japan's tradition stepping into the tea house, bearing a solemn, weighty beauty that dares respect. Sometimes you sit down afterward to polish your okubo, examining the tiny scuffs along the sides, the faint skid marks as if each scratch tells its own story. And you think to yourself, these aren't shoes, this is a wooden diary, a journal written not in words, but in echoes, slips, and glides each step, marking your journey. You know these clogs won't last forever. One day, you'll leave the Maiko stage and become a geiko no longer wearing okubo. But that clop-clop will remain in your mind, the sound of your first tentative steps into article parts, fear, beauty, and excruciating sore feet. At some point in your Maiko journey, after you've mastered bowing at the perfect angle while balancing on okubo as tall as a miniature apartment building, a new challenge arises. It's not a test of strength or of tea ceremony skills, but a subtler trial, explaining to others that you are not a courtesan. Yes, welcome to the 21st century where everything can be looked up online, except the basic distinction between a geisha and a sex worker. It was an autumn afternoon in Kyoto, and you were performing shamisen at an elegant tea gathering. Fragrant tea, wagashi as pretty as paintings, guests dressed with decorum. An American gentleman in a suit that could iron out anyone's mood approached you with a friendly tilt of the head. "Excuse me, are you like, a high-class entertainer?" You didn't flinch. You've heard this before, many times, in many variations, from escort to entertainer to concubine. Some even asked if you had a booking fee. You smiled the smile you've honed over the years, neither too intimate nor too distant. A smile that says, "I understand you mean no harm, and I'll help you out of this faux pas as politely as one might guide a gentleman lost in a convent." you replied as gently as pouring hot water into a porcelain cup. It's wonderful that you're interested in our traditions. But geisha are not courtesansway, are cultural performers. And just like that, you'd corrected a centuries-old misconception without anyone turning red. A quiet victory, but one worth noting. The line between geisha and courtesan has long perplexed not only tourists but even Hollywood filmmakers. And you, draped in history-heavy silk and powdered white as morning mist, stood at that boundary like an unpaid cultural ambassador. The difference is, you know well, lies not in makeup or gait. It lies in the obi. A geisha ties her obi at the back, neat, elegant, and impossible to untie without assistance. Why? Because it isn't a symbol of seduction, it is a symbol of art. In contrast, courtesan soiran in traditional Japanti, their obi at the front, sometimes as elaborate as a miniature shrine gate, easily untied for convenience's sake. And although they, too, dress in finery, they serve an entirely different purpose. Yet explaining this without embarrassing anyone is another artone you, who have learned to hold a tea bowl steady, despite trembling knees in slippery okobo, are gradually mastering. Whenever someone looks at you and asks a harmlessly curious question, you don't correct them like a history teacher. You don't purse your lips or say, "Sorry, you've knocked on the wrong door." You wield grace as your weapon. You say, "Oh, there's so much fascinating about geisha that people often don't know. For example, we study shamisen, traditional dance, and the art of conversational to preserve our culture." You speak while gently twirling your fan, your gaze drifting across the room as if catching the scent of early plum blossoms. Occasionally, someone overzealous inquires about extended services. You smile, bow your head deeply, and reply, "We serve with our spirit anything corporeal, I believe. You might seek elsewhere." Some don't grasp immediately, but most understand. Not because your words are harsh, but because you are too elegantly polite to allow their rudeness to persist. Some don't grasp immediately, but most understand. Not because your words are harsh, but because you are too elegantly polite to allow their rudeness to persist. You recognize that part of your role is not just performance but education, quietly and courteously. You are like the guardian of a spiritual museum, where each artifact is a traditional memory to be shielded from mislabeling. Sometimes, you sit with your Wani-san, Geiko mentor, and listen, as she recalls the 1970s, when Western media flooded into Kyoto, filming geisha under golden lights with seductive soundtracks. She'd shake her head. "They imagined us as fantasy, but in truth, we are discipline." You never forget that line. Geisha are not a fantasy. Geisha are discipline. And the irony is, those who mistake you for a courtesan rarely intend offense. They've been fed by films, misled by Google, and believe they're admiring something sensual while you, with every step and every word, convey perfect control of emotion and language. You do not blame them. You simply use your knowledge to transform misconception into opportunity, a gentle lesson served with tea and a smile. So that evening, you step out of the tea house, a soft breeze, white powder intact, obi tied snugly at your back, okobo marking each step. Someone glances back at you and this time asks nothing. Just bows. You bow in return. The line between geisha and courtesan? It may seem fragile to outsiders, but to you, it is as clear as a shamisen note in the still of night, deep, unwavering, and in no need of further explanation. After months of learning to bow as if programmed by traditional tailors and yoga instructors, after mastering balance on your towering okobo, and distinguishing a genuine dana from those merely seeking to be one, you enter an advanced art form no textbook teaches, absent from any shamisen or fan dance syllabus. Yet in the world of maiko and geisha, it surpasses even the perfect song. This is the art of refusal without uttering no. If you think, "Just say no," suffices, congratulations, you've proven you've never attended a Kyoto tea ceremony where a 60-year-old merchant invites you to moon viewing at midnight in an empty alley, with no witnesses. Geisha, you see, are not only dancers, musicians, and tea pourers. They're also masters of social evasion, a soft martial art that inflicts no harm, yet leaves others so perplexed they second-guess themselves. For example, when a guest, often having had a few cups of sake feeling gregarious, leans in and whispers, "You're extraordinary. If I asked you to dinner just the two of you, would you come?" Instead of blanching, three-stepping backward, and shouting, "No, thank you," you tilt your head gracefully, offer a gentle smile, and reply in a tone as if complimenting a flower arrangement. You certainly know how to make an evening more intriguing. That's it. No acceptance, no refusal, no bruised pride. The conversation then naturally changes course, like a vessel quietly altering its route to avoid a storm. Another scenario, a gentleman, his smile that of one who's just concluded a lucrative silk trade, he asks, "Could I see you privately this weekend?" You place your hand lightly on your sake cup, smile as though recalling a splendid cherry blossom season, and softly answer, "Oh, what a pity. My schedule is completely full." Short, effective, and with not a trace of the word no, only a gentle mist of mysterious scheduling. The secret lies in floating atop the conversation like a leaf boat, not sinking, not swept away, but refusing to let anyone climb aboard. You steer the atmosphere with your tone, pivot topics with feigned compliments, and when needed, pour another cup of sake, as if the answer resides at the bottom of the bowl. Someone once asked, "Aren't you worried they'll misunderstand?" You smile. Of course they misunderstand. But you're not afraid, because you control the air. And you know how to extinguish flames with a paper fan. Once, while playing shamisen during a reception, a merchant, clearly confusing this gathering with a fortune-telling session, said, "If you were my destined match, I would surely know." You glance up, lips curving, eyes shining with mock excitement. "Well then, I'm certain you'll find the next piece delightful. I believe it perfectly suits a belief in destiny." And so he nodded, pleased with himself. Unaware, you gently escorted that awkward topic out onto the porch, locked the gate, and waved it off with music. A particularly wealthy patron once asked you, "If I were to cover all your expenses from your kimono to your lessons in exchange for closer companionship, how about it?" You didn't fling your fan in his face, nor did you spill sock on your sleeve. You simply seed a breath, as if an autumn breeze passed by, and said, "It's truly generous of you to support my artistic growth, but I'm afraid my mind is fully devoted to practice." That's it, no refusal, but no door opened either. In truth, this skill isn't only for geisha, it's the art of living. Anyone who's ever been invited to a 7 a.m. Sunday meeting dreams of saying, "It's an honor to be trusted, but I'm afraid I already have plans to meditate and sleep." With the right tone and body language, you can decline the world and the world still believes you've thanked it. You're neither cold nor harsh. You simply deftly avoid becoming someone else just enough to satisfy everyone. And after each event, when you remove your okubo, brush the powder from your cheeks, and tuck away your paper fan, you look in the mirror and know you've declined everything you needed to. With elegance, with wit, and without ever using the word no. If you once believed that the Okiathi shared home of Maikwa is a place overflowing with sisterly laughter like in a green tea commercial, then you've probably also believed that cats would wash your dishes when no one is watching. The Okia is more than a roof. It's an ancient arena wrapped in silk, a place where every glance, every step, and above every smile can be a strategically wielded strike. Here, no one shouts, no one flings footwear. Yet occasionally, your comb will accidentally fall down the stairs just minutes after you've been chosen as the evening's headliner, a clear accident. Even though it happens precisely when you step out of the room and only one person remains behind. And yes, that person is Urith, same one who inadvertently declared at last night's gathering that your kimono looked rather rustic, in a countryside style. You learn early that everything in the Okia has two faces, the silk side and the irony side. Maiko are artists, and artists, as you know, excel at performance, sometimes through talent, and sometimes by smiling in a way that delivers a velvet-edged slap to the spirit. One day, as you enter the dressing room, Yuri peers at you through the mirror, her smile bright as early spring sunlight, and says, "So, you're wearing those earrings? I heard people only wear that style if their cheekbones are a bit too round." You study yourself in the mirror, then reply with a smile, "Oh, how perceptive of you. Perhaps that's why I often wear a high-collared scarf so fitting for discretion." No anger, no argument, just two smiles sculpted like razor-sharp velvet. In the Okia, you need not raise your voice to be noticed. You simply need to know when to offer a soft clap and when to lift your fan at just the right angle to cast a flattering light. Once, you discovered that the kimono you had set aside for the main performance had been borrowed by mistake, and of course, the borrower was Aiko, the new Maiko who always happens to arrive late to rehearsals. When Aiko stepped out in the robe you'd hung up, she sighed. "I hope you don't mind. I thought no one had chosen this one." You smiled. No narrowing of the brow, no complaint. You simply said, as if recalling an old haiku, "That's quite all right, Aiko. I've always believed each of us should try things, just beyond our abilities." The words fall as softly as a blossom, yet in the Okia they ripple like pebbles cast into a Zen pond. There is no malice here. This is survival through a smile. For if you wish to endure and, not merely survive but shine, you must learn the language of the wind, gentle, flexible, and when necessary, capable of sweeping away uninvited petals. You do not retaliate. You adapt. You step back with grace in order to step forward with brilliance. In the morning, you rise earlier. You practice the shamisen longer. You polish your kimono more meticulously. And in the evening, when you enter the tea house lantern light bathing your face, you smile, as though unaware of the stabs in the back. Yet in truth, you know and you record every blow in the memory of someone who once endured 3 straight hours of Seiza. One night, you and 3 other Maiko are invited to perform at a grand gathering. Everyone wants to impress. Yuri chooses to sing. Aiko performs a dance. You play the shamisen. And just as you raise your bachi for the first note, someone accidentally knocks over a cup of tea's icy contents pouring directly onto the hem of the kimono you just changed into. You remain silent. You say nothing. You simply smile, bow to the audience, and continue playing. The tea stain dries gradually. The hem still bears its mark. But that very night, the most influential patron there approaches and says, "I have never seen anyone maintain such composure, drenched and chilled as you are. Truly impressive." You bow in thanks. And inside, you know, your smile has won yet another battle won without firing a single shot. And then, one day, you cross the threshold of the Okia no longer as the apprentice Maiko, the girl who once dropped her fan into the tea kettle or tried to walk straight in the rain without slipping in her notorious okobobot as a geisha. A title not bestowed at a graduation ceremony with fireworks or certificates, but conferred by the weighty silence of Oka-san and her barely perceptible nod like a speck of powder drifting onto your takamakura pillow. From that moment on, you are no longer a trainee but a fully realized artist. You no longer must wear your own hair stiff as a cult statue. You now use wigs you can remove, hang on a wooden rack, and you needn't sleep on a wooden pillow as though you were part of a scientific experiment in cervical compression. Your kimono has changed, too. Still silk, still flowing, but elegant rather than ostentatious. No more sweeping sleeves that drag the floor as if you were responsible for cleaning the Okia's tatami. No more obi as wide as a castle gatano. It fits snugly, discreetly, as perfect as the final punctuation of a haiku. And above all, you are no longer led. You enter the Teihou Seno introduction, no fanfare. Every gaze turns to you as if awaiting a wordless song. You need not speak, a slight bow, a subtle tilt of the fan, a perfectly timed pluck of the shamisen, and the room once as noisy as a trading floor falls silent, as though everyone waits for your instruction to brew tea. No, you wield no political power. You command no army, no national budget, but you possess absolute dominion over the atmosphere. You know how to make people feel special without touching them. You know how to hush a crowd without gesturing. You hold artistry in your gaze and aestheticity in every fingertip. You no longer compete to be chosen. Now, you are invited first. New Maiko whisper behind you. She only glances, and the guests rise. And you neither confirm nor deny, you simply sip your tea. As though bending perception with your eyes happens every day, between shamisen performances and cherry blossom seasons. But your greatest transformation lies not in your new obi or your silent gait, but in your mastery of silence itself. Once you feared it, now you command it. One evening, at a gathering with a new Dana man, who spoke as if campaigning, you only need to set down your tea bowl an instant later, and pause in silence 2 beats longer. The entire table drops into stillness. He looks up, forces a smile, straightens his collar. No one speaks, yet everyone understands. You have restored balance to the room with a single soundless moment. You are living art, not a painting on a wall, but one that moves. You are the guardian of tradition without needing to explain. You make others fall in love with Japanese culture without uttering a word. And you know that restraint itself is power. There's no need to announce your talent. People will witness your performance. No need to claim your intelligence. It is felt in the gentle curve of your smile. No need to compete. For anyone who looks knows. You need not win, you are the destination. A geisha never demands attention, yet no one can help but notice. And strangely, after you become a geisha, you begin to smile at the small mistakes of new Maikothi, very missteps that once kept you awake at night. You see them falter with the shamisen, bow at the wrong angle, and instead of mockery, you gently guide them, not because you've softened, but because you have come to understand that a true artist need not prove themselves, only share their light. Each night you return to the okia, remove your makeup, take off your wig, and look in the mirror. The face looking back is no longer someone's rough sketch, it is a complete masterpiece. No further touch-ups required. Everything is exactly in its place. There is no grand farewell ceremony, no fireworks or banners reading, "Congratulations on your retirement, Kyoto's finest geisha," when a geisha steps away from the stage. There are no fan-shaped gift boxes, and no one insists you cut a large cake while wearing your kimono. When a geisha's journey ends, it does not come like the school bell signaling class dismissal, but like a soft breeze closing a shoji door at dawn, silent to the ear, yet felt by everyone. You were once a Maiko with your own hair, so rigid that each night's sleep became a sacred ordeal. Then you grew into a geisha, one who leads a gathering with a mere nod, who shapes the atmosphere with her breath. You smiled when people misunderstood, bowed when they failed to grasp, and used your gaze to subtly reshape the world of the tea house. Then, one morning, you awaken to the faint patter of rain and realize you no longer need to fold an obi. No one pressures you to retire. There is no mandatory age limit, but you understand. You no longer need to be seen because now you are what people feel. Some geisha choose the obvious path. They become oka, Sante Okia's foster mother, the steward and teacher of younger Maiko. An oka, san needs few words. She glides down corridors with downcast eyes, and a single gentle reminder from her is enough to have the entire house retie their obi and soften their voices. A skilled oka-san never scolds. She communicates through tradition and green tea. You might choose another path, to slip quietly into the background, not to abandon the art, but to take up a new margin. You no longer participate in grand banquets. Instead, you host intimate salon-sold patrons, familiar shamisen tunes, a steaming nabe pot, and the warm glow of lanterns. There, no one asks if you are a geisha. They know, and that is enough. You need not prove anything, for a geisha's legacy does not dwell in tangible evidence. There is no golden nameplate, no honored seat. Your name will not be etched on any monument, nor will it likely appear in Japanese history textbooks unless there's an exceptionally daring and discerning teacher. Yet your legacy will live on, in places unnoticed. It lives in the smile of a young Maiko as she bows correctly for the first time. It lives in the way a paper fan unfurls on the perfect beat, gentle yet decisive, as though the wind itself salutes spring. It lives in the silence preserved through an entire gathering. When everyone pauses to listen to a lone shamisen resonant sound, none dare break that moment. For they feel, even without seeing you, that you remain there like tea's lingering fragrance. It lives in how people remember you, not by recounting stories, but by recalling the feeling. I once met a geisha. She said nothing, yet I remember her to this day. And that is enough. You become part of Kyoto through tourist brochures, but through narrow alleys where wooden clogs once tapped out a steady rhythm. You linger in the glow of Gion's lanterns, in a cat's cry drifting past shoji at midnight, and in the misty dawn when tea is poured into porcelain cups. And, in truth, that is every artist's goal, to become part of the atmosphere. No need to stand on stage, no need for spotlights in your face. Simply be present, at the right moment, in someone's heart. You sometimes receive handwritten letters from former Maiko. Oka-san, yesterday I met a new patron. I did exactly as you taught, never said no. Only, oh, what a pity. I must practice my shamisen for the cat that evening. He laughed and asked no more. I know now I am growing. You smile, refrain from replying immediately. Perhaps a week later, you send back a postcard. Be careful not to open your fan against the wind. Otherwise, you are doing very well. Sometimes you sit on the veranda, watching leaves fall, your hand resting on an old fan box, each fan a story. You no longer use them, yet you do not discard them. They are silent witnesses to a life lived beautifully. A new neighbor moves in, unaware you were once a geisha. They ask, "What did you do, ma'am?" You sip your tea, tilt your head, and say, "Oh, I simply know how to brew tea, pour sake, and, at times, silence a room." And that is enough. Marriage. Yes, that very institution that has given humanity headaches since antiquity, no less puzzling than the invention of the wheel. Ancient Mariaga bond transcending time. And you, if you hesitate to confess because you're unsure whether we truly match, know that your ancestors simplified matters by inscribing everything on clay. In Sumer, the flood-prone, volatile climate region of Mesopotamia, people didn't ask, "Do you love me?" but rather, "Have you read the dowry contract's terms thoroughly?" Indeed, marriage there was a genuine contract etched upon clay tablets explicitly detailing who would bring how much barley, how many cattle, and, of course, whether the bride was permitted to leave her family home unannounced. In Egypt, matters were a touch more poetic. There were no clay tablets but rather love poems. Yes, you might find a young man in a linen kilt standing by the Nile murmuring, "My heart trembles for you like papyrus in the monsoon wind. It sounds sweet, but don't forget." This was followed by wedding celebrations lasting several days, during which the entire village drank beer and danced until no one could tell the groom from the water-bearer. But if you believe marriage was all flowers and verse, then journey to Sparta where love was summed up in 2 words, survival. There, the bride was abducted at night not by enemies, but by the groom. She was then shaved, bald, and clothed in men's attire. Yes, you heard correctly. In a warrior society where men spent their days clutching shields and discussing their abs, a woman dressed as a man was deemed more companionable. And, naturally, after the ceremony, they did not cohabit immediately. Instead, they met clandestinely by night like Romeo and Juliet, but with an extra aroma of sweat and dust. And then, in India, marriage becomes not just a union of 2 people but a sacred vow before the heavenly fire. You and your partner walk 7 steps around the sacred flame, each step sealing a promise to share joy, endure suffering, love each other in old age, and of course to eat curry together in harmony. If after the 7th step you still feel the same, congratulations, you are married. In ancient China, marriage carried a touch of mystique. An invisible red thread was said to bind destined partners, even if they lived hundreds of miles apart, and often a matchmaker made the call. You didn't need Tinder, only a keen-eared matchmaker and a list of auspicious couplets. After the wedding, you pour tea for your parents not to ask their permission, but to declare, "Yes, we are officially a pair, and here is hot tea, please, no childbearing questions just yet. Japan, too, has its own unique charm with the Sansan Kudo ritual, drinking 3 sips each from 3 cups of sake. If you thought wedding drinking was for getting drunk, the Japanese turn it into poetry. And if you mistime your sips, you risk being judged lacking in virtue. Meanwhile, the Romans celebrated matrimony as a political festival. Golden veils, elaborate rites intended to reassure the gods, we have erred not, we merely enter a long-term contract. The Jewish tradition centers on the ketubah contract, explicitly detailing duties, rights, and safeguarding the bride should romance wane. No need to guess at feelings, just read the fine print. The Celts, fond of feasts and legends, practiced hand fasting, binding the couple's hands with cord to symbolize unity. No paperwork, no clay tablets, just rope and steady eye contact. And if, after a year and a day, neither partner has throttled the other, the marriage became fully recognized. See, from Sumer's clay tablets to Egypt's love poetry to Sparta's head-shaving abduction, ancient marriage was always solemn, yet wildly inventive. It combined ritual, society, religion, and a dash of dark humor enough to carry people through even arranged unions. So tonight, if you turn over to your snoring partner, or quietly ponder someone you've yet to confess to, remember, our ancestors survived floods, scaled mountains, delivered cattle, recited poems, sipped sake, and bound hands with cord just to love and be loved. You stand before Malborkso, vast a red brick castle that you begin to suspect the ancients built it not by hand but by sheer willpower, and a lot of bricks. This is not merely a fortress. It is a declaration in fired clay of power, faith, and a touch of arrogance. Constructed in the 13th century by the Teutonic Knights, those who bore the white cross on black cloaks and never cracked a smile in their portraits, Malbork was no holiday retreat. It was the theocratic, military, and urban planning center of the medieval world. You cross the wooden bridge, once thundered by iron-shod hooves like war drums. The gate stands tall and narrow, reminding all that entry is a privilege, not a right. Beyond lies a labyrinth of corridors, courtyards, and staircases so steep that if you do not believe in God, you will believe in gravity. At the heart lies the Abbey and St. Mary's Church. Here, the knights not only prayed but strategized territorial expansion like armored entrepreneurs. Faith inspired them, but sword and shield were their tools. Malbork served as the launchpad for fervent conversion campaigns across the Baltic. They carried not only the Bible but also ballistae, a rock-throwing engine you'd hardly call a welcome gift. Yet, like all monuments born of ambition, Malbork did not remain impregnable. In the 15th century, after a sequence of events every storyteller dubs turbulent, the Polish-Lithuanian alliance seized the fortress. Rather than destroy it, they repurposed it. From military stronghold to royal palace, Malbork echoed with steel. No longer it now echoed with flutes and political debate, often fiercer than any battle. You step into the great hall, where light filters through stained glass windows, dancing across brick walls like a fairy tale halo. But do not let its beauty deceive you. These bricks tell stories. Each one seems inscribed with a power struggle, a vow sworn under candlelight, or a whispered conspiracy at a feast. You touch the cold stone balustrade and imagine someone centuries ago standing here, contemplating the fate of an empire. In the 18th century, Malbork fell into Prussian hands. Later, the Nazis used it as a propaganda symbol. Then World War II struck, bringing with it, as with so many European historic sites, ruin and the chance for revival. After the war, the Poles didn't just rebuild. They restored Malbork with a love and stubbornness that commands respect. They relayed each brick, retold every story, so the castle would not only stand firm but also come back to life. Today, you can wander through its exhibition rooms, admire armor polished to a mirror shine, or imagine a Teutonic knight accidentally strolling into the royal latrine. From the top of the tower, you gaze down at the gentle flow of the Nogat River and realize that, despite the tides of history, Malbork remains an eternal witness. This fortress is more than a refuge. It is a symphony in brick and perseverance. A heritage not written in ink but in dust, blood, and a belief that if you build high and strong enough, your story will be told forever. Whether you are knight, king, occupier, or map-clutching tourist, Malbork looks down upon you from above, with a hint of pride, a touch of mystery, and an immeasurable supply of red bricks. And as you step away, casting one last glance at the castle under the sunset glow, you realize some structures are built not merely to endure but to prove that human will can turn to stone. Quite literally, you are a pioneer. Not the kind in a suit at a tech conference, but the kind who wears a wide-brimmed hat, carries an axe, and can build a home from just a few logs and a bit of hope. You traverse the Appalachian Range where roads have no names, but are strewn with gravel and haunted by winds that seem to dare each footstep. You head west, because everyone says the West is where dreams begin, even if those dreams come with snakes, bears, and a blizzard that might arrive before dinner. You raise a log cabin, a small, humble dwelling where every nail is driven by sweat and optimism that fades with each swing of the hammer. But then the first wisp of smoke curls from the chimney, and you know you have made a home. For now, until the winter winds rise and blow the door off its hinges. Women on the frontier are not the type to sit knitting while husbands bring home fish. They are the heart and backbone of the family. They mix dough for bread, watch the children, and scare off wolves with a stick and a stern glare. They need no superpowers, for the ability to kindle a fire in a snowstorm is heroism enough. The children? Oh, they have no iPads, but they have a full-time job, surviving. They learn to gather firewood, milk the cow, and sidestep chicken droppings. They play with sticks, stones, and boundless imagination. A cornbread supper at night is a well-earned reward after a day of running wild across the meadows without getting bitten by snakes. The frontier is land of freedom, a place you can be yourself, provided yourself can dig a well, hunt deer, and heal wounds with leaves. But such freedom comes with strain. You face not only the harshness of nature but tense encounters with native peoples, those who lived here long before someone deemed this land the new frontier. Life here leaves little room for romance. A marriage proposal might be as simple as, "You keep the fire burning well. Want to marry me?" And the honeymoon? Perhaps building a chicken coop together. You learn to read the sky, to forecast the weather, to set rabbit snares without ensnaring yourself, and to know that if you hear a howl at midnight you best stay inside. Sometimes, the silence of the woods is louder than any city, because it lets you hear your own heartbeat, the ache in your calves, and the wind telling stories that keep you awake. The pioneer community is small but tightly knit. Whenever someone finishes building a cabin, neighbors come to erect their chicken coop. When a harvest fails, someone shares their scant bag of cornmeal. They don't need Facebook to learn about their neighbors. The echo of your cough carries to the next cabin. And, of course, there is the little church. It's where people gather not only to pray but to swap news, vegetables, and the occasional bit of gossip. The officiant might be pastor, doctor, or the best marksman in the region, sometimes all three in one person. You live simply but profoundly. Your day begins with the rooster's crow and ends with the flicker of flames in the hearth. Letters arrive slowly, but when they do, each word is priceless. Life isn't easy, but it is rich in its own peculiar way, enough to fill you with pride as you stand on the land you've tamed. You are part of history not by inventing something great, but by surviving and building a life where others saw only wilderness. And if someone asks, you can smile, shrug, and say, "Oh, I'm just the one who lived out there where wild dreams meet reality, and I still have all 10 fingers." The frontier is not merely a geographic boundary. It is where aspiration, courage, and a touch of foolishness meet. It is where America was shaped not by speeches, but by cornbread slices, blistered hands, and the quiet love of ordinary people. And if you hear this as you drift off to sleep, know that within you also lives some of that frontier spirit, strong, enduring, and able to warm any room with your laughter. You have lived like a Maiko walking on towering wooden clogs while still keeping your lipstick perfect smile. You have glided past the red brick walls of Malbork Castle, where faith was spread by sword and fired clay. And you have built a cabin on the American frontier where winter arrives unannounced and corn does not plant itself. Now, you lie in a warm bed, unburdened by kimono on your shoulders, freed from the bridal shave, and with no one demanding a shamisen performance in exchange for a polite nod. All you need is to slow your breathing, pull up the covers, and let history do the rest. Lull you with memories that are not your own, yet somehow bring you a strange peace. After all, people of every era have struggled to truly live, to truly love, and to dress themselves without falling off their clogs. They have sighed, they have giggled, they have longed for nightfall so they could lie still just as you do now. So if today has been a long day, close your eyes. No more adventures needed. We've traveled far enough from Kyoto to Kentucky. And before you drift into dreams, leave a like as the final period on today's chapter. Sleep well, and I'll meet you at the next stop on our journey through history, with a cup of tea and a smile.